There you go, Shane. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks, Trish. I appreciate that. So yeah, my name is Shane Curtis with Planet Technologies, and welcome to the Intune Admin Training that we've prepared for you. So today, the agenda is as follows. We're going to start out with an introduction of Intune. I'm just going to explain to you kind of high level what it is and how it integrates with the Office 365 project. We'll start off going over some of the Intune configuration settings and some of the policies that we've configured. I'll show you, what the different types of policies that can be configured and what you can do with the tool. And then we'll go into the Office 365 part of it, where we talk about O365 Pro Plus and how it's been configured and set up. There's a few subcomponents of that, and that is the Office Readiness Toolkit is more of a preparatory tool to prepare to deploy Office 365. So we'll talk about that, what it's for, how we implemented it, what the benefit is, and so on. And then we'll talk about O365 itself. We'll also talk about Azure Information Protection Client, which is something that needs to be installed afterwards. And as Trish said, we'll do Q&A in the middle and at the end of the presentation. Okay, so Intune. Intune is a Microsoft product. It's a cloud-based service from Microsoft. The main purpose behind Intune is to allow your users to be productive, but still keep your corporate data protected. So it's both for productivity and security. With Intune, you can do a lot of different things. The main purpose is managing mobile devices and apps. You want to manage, mainly you're managing what users can do with them and what company data they will have access to. And that's done with conditional access policies, and we'll be talking more about that. Another thing you can do with Intune is protect your organization's information by controlling the way users access and share that information. You can control it through, for example, app protection policies that let you control copying and pasting information from one app to another. Another thing you can do is ensure devices and apps are compliant with your security requirements. So that's a big goal with Intune. Intune is a product that is made for managing the full life cycle of your devices and your applications that are deployed to those devices. But from the point where you start managing the device, that's when you enroll it in Intune. You can then push down policies to it. You can use those policies to manage those devices throughout the life of the device. And then when you go to retire that device or maybe repurpose it to someone, you can either factory reset that device completely, or you can just wipe only the corporate data off the device, which is handy in like BYOD or bring your own device type situations, being able to just wipe the corporate data and not touch anything personal about the phone. Intune is a component of a suite that's offered by Microsoft. It's called the Enterprise Mobility and Security Suite. And other products that come in that suite are Azure Active Directory, and which is used for identity and access control. It's similar to on-prem Active Directory, which you're probably familiar with, but it's in the cloud. And Azure Information Protection, which is used for data protection. I'll talk a little bit more about it, but that helps to protect sensitive data like personal information, like social security numbers, credit card numbers, that sort of thing. So Intune also integrates with Azure AD and with Azure Information Protection. It also integrates closely with Office 365, and I'll show you how with Intune it has, especially with modern Windows operating systems, modern versions of Windows 10. It has an app type that you can set up that's specific to the O365 suite to help you deploy Office 365 to those machines. So we're going to start out with a little tour of Intune. I'm going to share I've got my desktop shared, not just the deck, so we can look at the portal. And I'll go through some of the different types of policies that you can configure. So let's jump over into that. So with Intune, for the most part, you're going to be going to the main portal, which is portal.azure.com. That is, there is an older version of the Intune portal. They have migrated away from that and come into the new portal. However, for some platforms, such as Windows 7, you still have to go into the old portal to manage those. So I'll talk more about that a little bit later. You will need to spend some time in there, but most of the time you'll be in the main portal here at portal.azure.com. You can use just about any modern browser to access portal.azure.com. I'm going to be using Google Chrome today, so I'm just going to open that up and go to portal.azure.com, and then I'm going to select my user account, which mine looks like on Microsoft.com here, and got my password in there already. Now, the first thing I want to point out is that when I log into the portal, we have multi-factor authentication set up, or MFA, and it's calling me right now. So I'm going to answer my phone.
Microsoft sign-in verification.
And then this lady asks me to verify my identity. So I'm going to just hit the pound sign, is all I have to do to verify that she's called me. I've answered.
Successfully verified. Goodbye.
And then she hangs up. Well, it's a computer, not a real person. But she hangs up, and then it lets me in. So that's multi-factor authentication. That's there's a bunch of different ways you can set that up, and you can authenticate in different ways too. Mine is set up to call me. There's also an authentication app that you can use to authenticate back, but that's part of the MFA requirements that were set up to make sure that the people logging into the to this portal are who they really say they are. So it provides extra security around that. Once we're in here, this is the first thing you'll see is the main dashboard. And this is the Azure portal itself. I mean, right now, we are not yet inside Intune. I can see my user account up here, who I'm signed in as, and the main dashboard. And then along this blade on the left-hand side, you can see all the different services that are available through Microsoft Azure. Some of which the state of Arkansas might be using, and others maybe they're not, right? But Intune, you definitely are. And I've already added it here. But when you first log in, you're not going to see that. So to add that, or really to manipulate any of this that you might want to manipulate here, about what appears and what doesn't, you want to go up to this All Services button. So you click on that, and in All Services, you can search for the service that you want. So in this case, I would be searching for Intune. And I didn't hit enter or anything, it just dynamically starts searching. And you'll notice that I have mine starred. These you can click on these to unfavorite them, so to speak. And when I unfavorite them, you notice they disappear from this blade over here. But if I want to favorite them and put them in the blade, then I click the star and it adds them at the bottom here. At that point, you can grab this little ellipsis here. Actually, can I just grab it? Yeah, I can grab it anywhere actually, and bring it up here, and I can move it around. And so maybe I want to pop it up here at the top so it's front and center. And that's usually what I do, and I usually drag Azure Active Directory up there as well because sometimes I need to get in there. So any services that you, just in general, anything you're doing in Azure Portal is you can move these around as you see fit. So once you're there, you can just click on Intune, and it loads up the main screen here. Silence my phone here. And you're presented with this overview to start with. You can see there's different areas we can dive into here, as far as device enrollment, setting up device compliance policies, device configuration policies. We can look at the list of devices, apps that we might want to add to the portal and then deploy out to our users as either required or available. Available meaning it would be more of self-service. They can go out and into their company portal app and they can install apps from there. And then we have conditional access policies down here. So I'm going to talk about all of these in turn. I'm going to start with device configuration. So device configuration is, you'll probably spend a good amount of time here at first setting it up the way that you want to configure your devices. How you can configure the devices is going to depend on what types of options are available for each type of platform. So if I go into profiles, you can see I've already set up a few of these, right? And this was based on the requirements that were given to me from DIS, right, about what requirements they wanted. These are just some base requirements. They're pretty standard requirements, though. That I imagine these will be similar to things that you will want to set up. If we look at this button up here, Create Profile, that's how you start a new what's called a profile, which is basically a group of policies that you want to apply to a particular machine. You can give it a name. This is the name that I chose, and I usually put the platform in there. It's got the platform in a separate column, but this is something that DIS wanted to see, and it is kind of handy because it helps it to manage it alphabetically when it's sorted by the profile name and keep it in the right order, and you can just immediately see what platform it's for. So you can, in the case of the state, we're managing iOS devices. We're managing, which could be iPhones or iPads. We're managing Android devices. We're also managing Windows 10 machines, so that you could build policies for that. So when you go to create the profile, the first thing you need to do is choose. You can see the profile type is grayed out until you choose a platform. And you have to choose what platform you want to create a policy for. So say I want to choose an iOS platform, then I can choose a configuration type. What type of profile do I want to deploy to those iOS devices? And so they're broken down into categories: device features, device restrictions, email profiles. So you can use that to set up an email profile with all the settings that will connect them to Exchange Online, for example, when their mailbox is migrated over to Exchange Online, which is part of this project, right? So so that's what these do. These email profiles here are geared towards that. We're not pointing them to the on-prem Exchange server. We're pointing them to Exchange Online in the cloud. So you can create those, and it sets it up so it's a little quicker for them to set up their email. All they need to do is supply username and password, and they can get in. You can also set up, I'm going to skip these for a second, and you can set up VPN profiles, which help set up instead of them having to manually create the VPN profile, they could set this up, and it works with popular VPN products like Cisco AnyConnect, or pretty much anything you might be using, Pulse or whatever your VPN solution is. Then you can create a VPN profile. They've got a lot of different options to support the different third-party VPN companies. Wi-Fi profiles to get people connected up to Wi-Fi. You could pre-share the password to get into WPA2 type security into your Wi-Fi, for example, and have them connect automatically whenever they're in range. You can set that up. Now, jumping back up a little bit, these certificates here, you can set up certificate profiles to work with these. If you were wanting to, not use a username and password, and you were wanting to use certificates for authentication instead, then you would use these profiles and push them down to work in concert with these other types of profiles here: email, VPN, and Wi-Fi mainly. So that's what that's for there. So say we want to pick device restrictions. This is a real common one that typically everybody's going to set up. You can see I have one set up over here, device restrictions. Usually people will at the minimum set up, hey, I want to require a password and I want to block simple passwords, and you can hover over this little eye, and this eye is for information, and you can hover over that to give you more information about that particular setting, right? And in this case, it just tells me that a simple password is defined, as 1234 or 1111. Maybe you want to block that. Maybe you want to make the minimum password length longer than 4 or 6. You can make it anywhere from 4 to 14. So there's all these different ways you can define how you want to configure the device, how it should be managed, and there's a whole bunch of different categories of that you can search through and decide how you might want to configure those particular devices. Like maybe you want to block backing up the device to iCloud. You can do that through here as well. So those are all configuration settings that you can push down. So the little information button gives you quite a bit of information, right? But also another good place to go that I spend a lot of time in, I know, for reference, is the Intune documentation. And we can send this link out to you guys so you have this as well. It's this link right here, and I'll go ahead and actually put that in the chat window right now. Okay, so that's in the chat window if you want to take a look at that. But so when you're in here, the place that I go to a lot is this how-to guide section, right? So if I'm setting up device restrictions and I want to know more than just what this tiny little eye can tell me here, then what I would do is I would go into the how-to guides, and I would go into configure devices, and I would go to configure device restrictions, which is the type of profile I'm trying to create, and I would go into iOS, and then it's got all the settings listed out for me, and it's got even more information about each of those settings, right? Well, actually, in this case, not much more than I had in the other field, but sometimes they have quite a bit more information about what that setting does. So you can come in here and learn more about it for that. So good reference place for that. Anyway, so that's how you set up the different profiles, and I can, if I were going to set up an email profile, that's going to change how that looks here. So when I go to set the email profile, I need to put in the email server, and I can give it a name. This is just a friendly name of what you want the profile to be named. Set what username attribute we're going to be using, which is usually user principal name, and so on down the line to configure email profiles. VPN profiles, again, you need to select the connection type to begin with. These are all the different providers that it supports. So if we were doing, for example, Cisco AnyConnect, you select it, and then you can go into these sub areas to put in, okay, this is what the settings are to connect to VPN, and this is the authentication method I'm using, and so forth, whether or not I'm going to enable split tunneling through the VPN, and anything you might need to set up there. I'll show you, to finish it off, what the Wi-Fi settings look like. So you choose the Wi-Fi type to begin with. Probably most of the time you're going to be doing basic, maybe not all the time, but which supports WEP and WPA and WPA2 type security. But if you have another type of security like PEEP or something like that, you can choose the enterprise setting, and there's PEEP and all these other types of security that you might use there. So those are configuration settings. Now, another thing you can set up is compliance settings, right? So device configuration is basically I'm pushing down this profile and I'm configuring this device a certain way. Now, compliance settings are basically saying I'm not going to do anything to your device, but I'm going to check your device, and it needs to meet these particular settings that I'm going to define in my compliance policies. And if it doesn't meet those settings, then I'm going to mark it as non-compliant, right? And then you can do more things with that. The compliance and non-compliance is usually used along with conditional access. And because conditional access, the whole idea behind that is to set certain conditions upon which that your users need to meet to be able to access certain company resources. For example, email company resource, right, is a big one, real common one. We're going to, you set up policies. And so you can, and there's conditions you can set right in the conditional access policies, but one of the conditions is that the machine has to be compliant. And that opens up a whole new realm of possibilities inside the device compliance area, because I can define, policies that say you're compliant if your machine, is encrypted, right? And you're not. If it's not encrypted, you're not compliant. And so if you're not compliant, then you can't have access to email, something to that effect, right? And so I've set up a couple of compliance policies here, but again, if I want to create a new one, I click on this button here, and it is divided up by platform still, so you have to choose what platform you want to support. So for example, iOS, and then from there, I can choose what settings I want, right, to determine if it's going to be compliant. I can say I require mobile devices to have a managed email profile, right? Require. I can base it on device health, like this is a really common one. Blocking jailbroken devices, or for Androids, it says rooted devices. Typically organizations want to block those from accessing their company resources. So I can set all those up. I can, system security, I'll show you what that looks like. Require a password, pretty simple, right? In the case of iOS, you won't see one specifically that says require that it be encrypted, because if you have a password set on iOS, it's just inherently encrypted. In the Android settings, it has a separate setting that says encrypted, require that it be encrypted. So that's handled separately. So that's where you do the settings in that part, this section here. And then if you go down to this little area here, actions for non-compliance, the default action is just to mark the device non-compliant. Now, in addition to that, you can also add another action, and that is you can send an email to the user, or you can remotely lock the non-compliant device. So you can add those in there as well. When you email the user, you can set up a message template. It's not created right here. You have to create it over here somewhere, but you can set up a message template and then choose it, and it'll say, and then the message template will say, well, you're not compliant for this reason, and you need to get compliant. And then you can schedule, and you can also add additional recipients. So you could add the yourself, or the IT group, the help desk, or something like that. You could add other recipients, which is handy to see that go out. And you can also set a schedule. You can either have it go out immediately, or you could set it for a certain number of days. Say, well, we'll let them be compliant for 3 days, but after 3 days, if they're not compliant, then this email goes out and warns them, hey, you're not compliant. Now, that's more nice approach, right? And it's good to layer that with the conditional access. Most people take a more heavy-handed approach and say, well, if you're not compliant, then we're just not going to give you access to company resources. So that's what most people do. But so I'll show you the conditional access. That the compliance works closely with the conditional access. Now, conditional access is actually a component. It's actually a component of Azure Active Directory. It's not really an Intune feature, but Intune integrates with it and enhances it in the sense that you can add those compliance policies, right? And say if Intune knows how to look at the device and check whether it's compliant or not, and then that works with the conditional access to deny them access to certain resources. So if I want to create a conditional access policy, I click on conditional access. I come in here, click on new policy. Again, the setup looks a little bit different, but The users and groups is who I want to assign that to, either all users or maybe just certain users. I can say select users and groups, and I can click this button that says users and groups, and then I can choose a group, right? Just search through there and choose one of the groups. It also has an exclude tab. You'll see this a lot when you go to assign these policies. You'll see this is how it lets you assign them, right? You'll see include and exclude, and between the two, exclude obviously is, the policy is not going to apply to these people, but it is going to apply to these people. So if I was going to do an exclude, I could say, maybe I want to say all users here, but except for this group, and choose a group here. So you can, you should be able to, pick out, whatever users you want to target based on that. Now, those groups are actually created in Azure Active Directory, right? And so it's pretty easy. You just click on new group and you add the users into the group that you want to be targeted. But that's how it determines who's in the group. So that's that. And I didn't show you assigning policies in the other ones, but it works the same. It just does it on a separate tab for assignments. That shows, hey, I want to assign these policies to these users. Or you can also do it to devices. If you wanted to create a group of devices instead of users, you could apply it to devices. So that's how you do that. So you pick who you want to target, and you pick what cloud apps you want to manage. Now, a really popular, you could do all cloud apps, or you could do select apps. Now, a really popular app that almost always comes up is Exchange Online. So like if I come up here and I say Exchange, I start typing it in, here's Exchange Online. So I would just click it and click select down here. And and just as a tip, this is how most of the blades work. They open up to the right, and then you have to close them down right to left, right? And as you go right to left, you usually have to click some button, to like select or OK or done as you're going backwards to save what you did, right? If you just come up here and just click on the X and close it out, it won't save it. It'll warn you and say, hey, you didn't, you're clicking off it. Did you mean to save something there? Sort of thing. So, like say I wanted to add another one. Here's another popular service to add in here is just the enrollment service. If I type in Intune, it'll bring up the Intune enrollment service. So I can deny based on certain conditions. I can deny enrollment of certain maybe platforms, for example, and so I can select that. Now, if I click that and I just click off of it and go over here, say click on conditions or just click the X, it warns me. It says, hey, your unsaved edits are going to be discarded. Is that okay, or do you want to cancel? And I'm going to say, yeah, it's okay. I don't want to save that. So, also another thing, way to navigate between these blades is up here at the top. You can click on these headings, and it'll back you up to where before. This is like the top level inside Intune. This is the dashboard. This is if I just want to go back to conditional policies area here. So you can just bounce back and forth using those to go back and forth. Okay, so then so if we pick the users, we pick the cloud apps, then we pick the conditions, right? Conditions are there's a bunch of different categories. There's sign-in risk. This requires an Azure AD Premium 2 license and special configuration, but you can define based on certain factors, what risk level is users are when they're trying to connect to a cloud resource. And it'll already have defined what their risk level is, but you can define based on the output of that. You can say, well, I'm going to say if you're high risk, then we're gonna assign some special conditions, like maybe high risk has to do the MFA to get access to this resource, but low risk does not. Something to that effect. You can also do it by device platform. So you could say, I only want, iOS and Android devices to be able to access this resource, or I only want Windows machines to be able to access the resource, something to that effect. You can do it by location. Locations, they're defined in another area here, but you can set up locations like these are talking about network locations. They're, as you can see from the note here, it says determine using IP address range. Also, when you set up the location, you can pick it by country, and it just knows that certain countries use certain IP ranges that it's coming from, and so you can choose either way. But really, what it's using in the background is using IP address ranges to determine what location they're coming from. That one is handy for determining, okay, so for these IP address ranges that I know are inside my corporate network, then, maybe I'm going to loosen the security up a little bit, but anything coming from outside of the corporate network, I'm going to ramp up the security and make it much more difficult for them to get in unless they meet certain conditions. So. Client apps, this is required if you want to say, if you want to manage how people are coming in. So if you want to manage, for example, if they're trying to access Exchange Online through a browser, you can manage how that's done here, either check it or uncheck it. Or if you want to determine if it applies to modern authentication clients, which is typically means, in the case of email, like Outlook, right, versus Exchange ActiveSync clients, which is more of your native email clients on, say, like an iOS device. Maybe you want to apply certain policies to, for the native clients and how they access, versus modern clients might be, maybe the restrictions are relaxed a little bit more because you're able to apply more policies to the to Outlook, because Outlook is more of a modern app that Microsoft Intune is aware of, and you can apply special data leakage prevention policies to Outlook that you can't apply to your native email clients. Device state is in preview. You can assign I haven't played too much with this, but there's another area in here where you can create your own device states. It's almost like using tags, just like custom tags that you want to define what device state certain machines are in, and you can base conditions. You can base your conditional access policies on that state. So those are all the conditions. Then under the grant area, you can then say, all right, if you meet these conditions, then we're going to grant you access. But we're going to have some requirements that we're going to apply to you. As we're granting you access, you might have to also it might require multi-factor authentication, right? Or we could just block you altogether. But based on these conditions, we could block you. But usually we're saying we're going to grant it, but we're going to require MFA, or we're going to require the device to be marked as compliant. You can also mark multiple of these, right? All these different requirements. Require hybrid Azure AD joined device would be like something that's joined to your on-prem AD, like a Windows machine that's also been synced up to Azure AD. Require approved client app, that's typically used for, I want to make them use Outlook. I'm going to force them to use Outlook, or else they can't get access to it. And that's a pretty common one, is to deny people access to Exchange Online unless they're using Outlook, So the global SOA banner thing, that's a separate deal. Don't use that one a whole lot, but that's like a status of services type banner that you can use, but it's not used a whole lot. But anyway, down here you can see that you can require either, if you select multiples of these, you can either require just one of these controls be true, or require all of them. Usually people say all of them. Usually you're saying you need to be true for all these things. You get all of these things rather than just one or the other. So, and there's a name, and if you want to set all these and you want to, but you want to have to, like, come in here and untarget the users or whatever thing, but you want to temporarily disable it, there's an on-off button here for the policy. Or maybe you just want to create it all, but you're not ready to implement yet. You could leave it off and then just save it. And you finish up by saying create down here, and it'll save it. Okay, so that's conditional access. Moving along here with all the different places you can go. Here's where you would find client apps. Now you can add a lot of different types of apps in here. Here's the list of apps. This is going to be blank. Well, you may or may not. I don't know if you're going to see these or not. We're going to talk more about role-based access here in just a minute. But these are the ones that we've added. And there's lots of different types of apps that you can apply. Again, that you can add. Excuse me. And you add them with this button here. So if I click the Add button and start out by choosing the app type, here's all the different app types that you can add. They've got them broken down into categories: store apps, the Office 365 suite apps, and then other. Store apps. iOS is a really convenient one because it actually connects directly to the iOS store. It's integrated with it. So all you have to do is choose the app that you want. Android's a little trickier. You have to kind of more manually go to the Google Play Store and copy and paste the URL, of the app into the app the app profile that you're creating here, and so on, right? Those are the more popular ones, and there's you can go and do Windows Store apps and things like that too. But the Office 365 suite we'll talk a little more about in just a little while. But here's that Windows 10 area where you can set up your Office 365 deployment, and then down in the other area they have you can create web links, you can do built-in apps, you can do line of business apps. These have to be in a special format. Mainly it's got to be in MSI format. There's a few other formats, I think, like AppX and MSIX, and there's a few formats that it supports. But most of the time, what you're doing here is you're integrating, putting it in as an MSI. Now, for a while, that has been kind of a limitation of Intune that we couldn't put an executable in here. And just recently, they came out with this new option of doing a Windows app like a Win32 app, and it's in preview mode. So there's still kind of you'll see things marked as preview in a bunch of different spots in the portal. Microsoft is constantly changing Intune and updating it and improving it, and so that you'll see some things in preview for a while until it's been established and they feel comfortable making it, full production ready. Doesn't mean you can't use it. I mean, I personally wouldn't hesitate to use it if it gives me what I want, and if I test it and it works, then great. But you might, I think it's just a warning that you might get unpredictable results. So you just want to test things out first and just make sure it does what you want it to do. But it's not quite as fully baked as some of the other options, is all that means. But this is great because then this opens up the ability to do executables with subdirectories of files that the executable might need to call on, like DLLs and other things that might be in the subdirectory when you're installing a typical executable. I mean, a lot of apps come with an executable and require a /q parameter so it can install quietly, and maybe they don't have an MSI that you can use. So in cases like that, this is a great option for that. And so that's a recent thing that I think they put that in there maybe about a month ago. So good option. So say we want to add an iOS app, I'll show you what that looks like. iOS is so easy, it's really convenient. All you have to do is click on Search the App Store, and then you can type in whatever you're looking for. Like, if you're looking for Outlook, you just type in Outlook, and it searches through. And I can just select Outlook and add it. I can go in here and configure app information, but for the most part, it auto fills in all of this. Now you'll see the same screen for Android, but you have to come in here and type this in yourself. And I usually copy and paste out of the Google Play Store, and just copy and paste the description out, for example, and type in Microsoft Corporation. It'll put in the minimum operating system required for the app and so on. But this fills it all in for you, which is great. And then once you save the app over here, then you can go and assign it. So say I wanted to send out, let's do Outlook iOS Store app, the one we've already got it in there. But say I want to send it out, I just click on it. If I want to check the settings, I can click on Properties and I can review what was already configured. But then to deploy it, I would click Assignments, right? And then from here, I can add the group that I want to assign it to. So, and then I can choose the assignment type. And the assignment types are either available for enrolled devices, available with or without enrollment, required, or uninstall. So you probably can get most of this just from the description. But this available for enrolled devices means that I don't want devices that are not enrolled to be able to get to it. That's going into something called mobile application management, which I'm going to explain in a minute, or what's now being referred to as app protection policies. Is that mobile application management is basically saying you don't have to enroll your device. This is mobile device management, right? Meaning the device is actually enrolled into Intune. It's able to manage every aspect of the device. And this option down here means that it could be enrolled in Intune, or maybe it's not. Even if it's not enrolled in Intune, that user, when they sign into the company portal with their user ID, is still able to see that application and download it and install it. Required means basically we're pushing it down. We're saying it has to be required. So they're going to get a notification that, oh, this app needs to be required and it's installing now. It actually, would just start installing. It'll just show up as an app on their device. And then the uninstall, uninstalls it if it was previously there. So that's about it. And then you select the group that you want to target. Again, you can also exclude groups that you don't want to target. So between some combination of these, you should be able to target exactly the users that you want to deploy to. Now, so let's talk about app protection. So mobile device management, or MDM. There's a lot of Intune products like Intune out there, like you might have heard of Mobile Iron, or I want to say AirWatch. I want to say ActiveSync, but it's AirWatch. AirWatch, Mobile Iron. Those are competing mobile device management products where you're actually managing the device, right? Now, but Intune also offers mobile application management, or MAM, which you might see that acronym some. Now they're getting away from that naming convention. Now they're calling it app protection now. So you might hear it called one or the other. But the idea behind app protection is that you're applying policies, and what you're doing is you're managing the actual applications versus the devices themselves, right? That is most often used in BYOD, or bring your own device type scenarios, where it's their personal device, and you're maybe just managing the applications on the device versus managing the device itself. And sometimes people take a softer approach with that. At the state, right now we're managing everything as a device, and some organizations opt to do that. They say, okay, it's your personal device, but if you want to use that device to access your company email, you're going to need to enroll that device. And when they enroll the device, it pops up sort of a informational page about what what the administrators can see versus what they can't see. There's a lot of information that Microsoft has published about what Microsoft can see and what they can't see, and what the owner of the tenant being this portal, the Azure portal, what the owner of the tenant can see, the admins of that tenant can see of their users' information versus what they can't see. For the most part, you can't see anything that people would consider personal. You can't see contents of emails or what websites they're going to or anything like that. But you can see lots of hardware inventory information about the device, and so that helps to determine what how much you need to see versus what you don't need to see. But the bottom line is when you can manage the device, it's a higher degree of security, right? Really, the app protection policies are mostly geared towards data leakage protection or prevention, right, or DLP. And so you're mainly trying to say that when you're using this app, and it has to be like a managed app, right? When you're using that app, like say it's maybe Microsoft Outlook, then I'm going to apply certain policies to it that say you can't save the attachments to your local device, or you can't back up any data that's coming from Outlook to the cloud, or to your iCloud or whatever, things like that. I'll show you what that looks like. So all of the app protection policies are located down here. And again, these can be applied to machines whether they're enrolled or not. When you enroll the device, it's basically you're saying I'm doing MDM. I'm doing device management, not just application management. But you can still manage the apps on that device if you just do the app protection. So if I create a policy, I can come in here again. I need to choose the platform, and I'll just leave it iOS again. This target to all app types. If I say no, I can say I want to. I can say I want to target only to apps on unmanaged devices, or only on apps on Intune managed devices. So again, this is talking about enrollment, whether or not it's enrolled, because you can apply app protection as either an additional layer to the device management, or just use it by itself, right? And typically, again, that's like a BYOD scenario where it's their own personal device. So I'm just going to say target all. I can say what app I want to create a policy for. The most common one by far is Outlook, but you can apply them to all this whole list of apps. It does have to be a managed app. In other words, an app that is aware of these policies, which is this list of apps here. So it can't just be just anything. But we pick one of these apps. That's why you would want to use those conditional access policies that say you need to use a modern app. In other words, you need to use a managed app like Outlook to access your email, so that you can layer on these policies if you wanted to. So I'm going to pick Outlook, and I'm going to come in here and do the settings, and it's got these subcategories. So in data relocation, I could say I want to prevent iTunes and iCloud backups of any data associated with Outlook, or I could say I don't want to allow the app to transfer data to other apps. So no copying and pasting of data, out of an email, out of a corporate email. I don't want them to be able to copy and paste it into their personal email, right? And I can define what that means. Like I can say you can't transfer data to any other app, period. Or I could say you can only transfer it to other policy managed apps. If it's another policy managed app, like maybe trying to copy some text out of an email in Outlook and put it into Word, then it would allow you to do that. But if you were trying to copy it out of email and put it into maybe some personal application that's not managed, like some sort of notepad type app or something, then it wouldn't let you, right? And there's some other options there. I won't get into that one. You can prevent saving as, like saving if I want to do a save as, I can say I want to prevent it, but maybe I want to say, you're only allowed to save it to your OneDrive for Business. Or you can save it to OneDrive for Business or SharePoint, but you can't save it to local storage. So you can define where that data can get saved to. Actually, and I misspoke, because this is transferring data up here, but the restrict and cut, copy, and paste with other apps is down here. But this is more data transfer stuff. Encrypt app data. So that's chosen a lot. If you're encrypting the device, the whole device, if you're doing device management, not as important, I guess, right? Because it's already encrypted, all the information on the device. But if you were just doing app protection by itself, then yeah, you would definitely want to choose encrypt the app data. So anyway, so a whole bunch of options there. There's access requirements as well. I can come in here and say you can require a PIN. I can say, yeah, I'm going to require a PIN to just open up Outlook. So this is not requiring a PIN to the device. They can, maybe they don't have a PIN on their device, but maybe you're not managing the device. So they could just open it right up, but open up their device. But when they go to open up Outlook, it's going to prompt them for a PIN. And then you can specify how complicated you want the PIN to be, or if you want them to if you want to allow them to use fingerprints instead, or facial recognition, you can do that too. Conditional launch isn't used so much, but these are additional parameters you can add in here, it can't be jailbroken, so even though you're not managing the device, there's some underlying things that you can say about the device model that say, if the application is running on a device that has these, that does not meet these parameters, then I'm going to not let them launch that app. So that's that there. And let me see where we're at here. We're almost to our break point. I think I did explain all of this. So this might be a good spot to take a break and do some Q&A.